Well, good morning. And good morning to our online audience who's watching us now or later. So the Greeks had their original strongman Hercules. Now, I don't know about fashion much, but wearing a lion coat all the time, that's not very fashionable. Well, even before Hercules killed the lion, it was me. I was the original strongman. Me, Samson, meaning the son. I was the one. I've got an interesting story if you want to hear it. I actually need to go back to the beginning of my story. You see, I was an Israelite, and my people had been subjugated for 40 years by those Philistines. Detestable people that God had allowed to come. Why? Because the Israelites had forgotten what their call was to worship God. And so God would send the Philistines. My parents were very righteous people. They did all the right things, followed the commands, and worshiped God, but didn't have children. And right at the point where my mother was about to give up on ever becoming a parent, God spoke to her. Not just speaking to her, but giving her a promise that her son would be extraordinary and save all of Israel. Me. And so when I was born, God again spoke to my mother and said, there's a certain condition for your son. He's going to be a Nazarite. Now, I don't know if you have a Jewish mother, but I do. Oy vey. And Jewish mothers can be a tad overprotective of their boys. You know, all Jewish boys are extraordinary. Well, I was actually. But she'd say, Samson, now remember, you're a Nazarite. And from early childhood, she drilled in the 3 laws into me. Do you know the 3 laws of a Nazarite? I could never eat grapes or drink wine. I could never touch anything that was dead. And the third one, I was never allowed to cut my hair or my beard. And those 3 things were instilled into me from early childhood. There were things and places and situations that I simply had to avoid for me not to break my laws. As a teenager, something happened. I would get in a situation, I would feel the Spirit of God come upon me and rush over me and take control of me. And that's when it started, that God would use me not just as a military leader, but as a judge, way before we had kings, to govern the people. And God's call on my life was to set us free from the despicable Philistines. Unfortunately, I like women. I like a woman. The bad side was she was a Philistine. Okay, don't judge me. And so, you know, I wanted her. I told my parents, they set the bride's price, and I was off to the wedding. On the way to the wedding, I made a little detour past the vineyard. I know, I'm not supposed to be there. Okay, don't judge. And as I was walking by the vineyard, a young lion suddenly stormed out, and the Spirit of God rushed upon me, gave me strength, and I just tore that lion apart. And I went on to the feast. It was a wedding that lasted a week, and boy, let me tell you, those Philistines can drink. And so did I. And I broke my first vow. I'm not supposed to drink. After the wedding, I go home to see my parents. And yeah, I wanted to see what happened to the lion, and so I walked past the vineyard again. And it was zooming full of bees, and the bees had come into the cavity, the belly of the lion, and had made a nest in it. And I scooped up the sweetest honey you would ever taste. And I took the honeycombs home to my parents. Of course, I couldn't tell them where I got it. Because my second vow, I'm not supposed to touch anything that's dead. And so I broke my first and second vow within a week. I tried to keep my nose clean, but it wasn't easy. I mean, who kills a lion and doesn't tell anybody about it? Hercules showed everybody he killed the lion and he wore the pelt. Of course I had to tell people. So I went back to my in-laws in the town, and they loved riddles. They were doing riddles all the time and trying to solve it, but I had an unsolvable riddle. And my riddle went like this. Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. I bet them 300 pairs of new clothes that they could not guess my riddle. Of course they couldn't. I gave them a week. My wife nagged me non-stop. The family nagged me. And they guessed and guessed, and they were wrong every time. And after a week, my wife finally wore me down. And I told her the riddle. I told her the answer. How stupid was I not knowing that this was not the first time that a lughead like me would be bested by a woman. And of course she told the family. And when the day came, they gave me the answer. What is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion? Well, I was in big debt. But this riddle was ultimately about me. So two of us can play Jeopardy. Yeah. I am stronger than a lion. I am foxier and wittier than a fox. So I caught 300 of them, tied them 2 by 2 by their tails together, put a torch in the middle, lit it up, and I sent those foxes loose on everything that the Philistines had growing. Vineyards, olive groves, grain, everything burned to the ground. Boy, was I stoked. Unfortunately, there was hell to pay. The Philistines got angry. My own people betrayed me and gave me over, bound me, and gave me to the Philistines to take care of. And again, I said, God, I'd messed up. I need your spirit. I need your strength. And those pieces of rope just broke like pieces of twine. And there was a dead donkey, and I took the jawbone, and I started playing whack-a-mole with those Philistine heads. I know, I'm not supposed to touch dead stuff. For the next 20 years, I did clean living. I was a good judge. I led God's people. Until I saw her. Delilah. Can you say it? Delilah. It rolls off your tongue. She was absolutely a beauty. I had to have her. At all costs. Never mind that she was a Philistine. Boy, I was smitten. She melted me like butter. My knees buckled. I was drawn like a moth to a flame. Come on, pile up all the idiomatic stuff. She did it to me. The strong man became weak. Little did I know what her plan was to betray me and sell me out. And so day after day, the phone rang. And she would pester me, give me the answer, you are embarrassing me, tell me. And I'd tell her, well, just tie my hair up. And I'd fall asleep, and she'd say, Samson, Samson, the Philistines are here. And of course, I would just defeat them. And she kept on nagging me until I gave my secret away. It's in my hair and in my beard. And that time when I woke from my sleep, I couldn't fight them off. I couldn't understand where my strength had gone. Why my muscles didn't flex this time. Until I felt my hair and my beard was gone. My strength had left me. God had left me. And so they gouged out my eyes, and I was blinded. Samson, the sun, was living in darkness. They chained me. They harnessed me like a donkey, like an animal, turning their grain mill round and round and round for hours on end. They'd forgotten that my hair would grow back. So they had this big feast to celebrate their God and their victory over my God. And so during this drunken feast, they had me show circus tricks, feats of strength. And I pleaded with God, give me one more chance to rectify this. Give me your Spirit. And as God's Spirit coursed through my veins, I took those 2 pillars and I pulled that entire building down with every Philistine warlord defeated. Of course, I died. What did I learn from my life? Maybe they should have gouged my eyes out earlier. Because everything I saw, I lusted after. Nobody could say no to Samson, the strong man. But in the end, they were like Superman's kryptonite to me. They made me weak. Women and wine and my pride and my hubris. I'd forgotten it wasn't me who was the strong man. It was God who made me strong. And without God, I was just mortal. I was weak. I'd forgotten that I was supposed to be a judge. Rather, I was master and commander of my life. I determined it. I'd forgotten what my call was. You see, everybody could see my long hair, my beard. And they knew that I was a Nazarite. They knew that I was a godly man, but inside there was nothing godly. There was just lust and wanton and my way. I'd become so impressed with my own feats, like breaking down the city door and walking away with it, defeating 300 Philistines just with batting an eyelid, that I'd forgotten to train somebody to take my place. I was a leader, but I was a lone leader. I never had anybody follow me. And so when I died, the Philistines swooped in and put my people under the yoke once again. I failed as a leader. But you know what? God never left me. Time after time when I messed up, God would be there, picking up the pieces, resetting my stupid button. And if God can work through a lughead like me, boy, then God can work through anyone. I'm Samson, and I learned some painful lessons. But the most painful lesson, I think, is if we don't learn from my life. There's a lot out there, a lot of young lions wanting to destroy you and tear you apart. There's a lot of lust and stuff out there that the world says, you need it. It's not just Hollywood. It's every magazine, every program, everything you see out there. Buy, have, get me. Your life is not adequate if you don't have me. But you know what? It's sometimes not worth it. Ultimately, you don't hear the name Delilah a lot today. But if you do hear the name Delilah, and she's playing with your hair, run.